close to 80-85% of the men experience male pattern baldness. Having an insight is one thing. Really believing that, yes, this insight is there and I feel the pain of the consumer is something else. You don't need to have a product in the beginning to test out an idea. We knew that there's a lot of latent demand, but consumers have a barrier of taking that action. What we've realized is that if you get the consumer with the wrong expectation, that's not going to help us. Problem is, one size doesn't fit all. Whatever it takes to get the platform up and running, that's what we got to do.
So welcome everyone. We at the Mesa School of Business love to host a lot of startup leaders who are doing amazing work in the startup ecosystem. Today also we have one such startup leader who has built a brand from scratch, has been in the founding team of a very well-known startup. And so we have Geet with us today, who has recently been promoted to VP of Marketing at Mosaic Wellness. But the most important thing about him is that he was amongst the founding members of Mosaic Wellness. He started off there as an entrepreneur in residence with Revant. Revant himself has also been to Mesa School and is an amazing entrepreneur. And I think what you guys are building here at Mosaic Wellness is absolutely fantastic. Of course, before that, you did your MBA from IIM Kozhikode. Did you meet Revant there? Because Revant is also an alumni of IIM.
Yes, that's where we met.
So I think a lot to learn from you. And this conversation, I think, would be helpful for me and for some of our users as well. Like I said earlier, our users are individuals who want to build D2C brands of their own. They are looking up to individuals like you who have done that. I think there are a lot of brilliant ideas out there in India, and I think it's almost our duty and an opportunity to kind of guide them on how such brands are built. So super glad to have you here, Geet, and I think you've just come out of a class, so you must be tired. So why don't we start off with that? How was your experience, interacting with our students? There was a case study that was given to them. I think they had to come prepared. So how did you enjoy that?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. And the classroom was a very interesting experience. I was very surprised by the amount of insights they already had. And they came very well prepared as well. So they had a lot of relevant questions for me. So the class was very engaging and very interactive. So I actually had a great time.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. And we'll just jump straight into it, right? I think you've had really valuable experiences, and I want to get as much out as I can from you in the next 15 to 20 minutes. So you started off as an entrepreneur in residence in a very early stage brand. I think Revant had already worked for a few brands before. Can you walk me through how that experience was? How did you decide to become an entrepreneur in residence? What was your experience like? What did the first 3 to 6 months look like? There are a lot of people there who are wanting to join such startups, so that'll be like a good guide for them.
Sure. So I knew Revant from my B school days, and at that point of time, post my B school, I was working in Reckitt, where I was looking at the health division. I was handling frontline sales. So really on the ground, I was getting a lot of learning and insights as well. Then Revant reached out and he mentioned that he's doing something interesting. And he knew from our previous interactions that my long-term goal is to start something of my own someday. And he made a very valid point that I probably won't learn that at Reckitt. So he said, I'm going to give you an opportunity. And Revant himself was an EIR in Fasos Rebel Foods before that.
Yeah.
So I think he understood the value of this role, which I didn't know at that point of time. I came because I trusted Revant a lot. And he said that if you want to learn how to be an entrepreneur, this is the best role that you can probably get. And I was pretty convinced. So I took up the opportunity and joined. Like you said, we were, I think, 6-7 folks back at that point of time, not very clear on what we want to do. Revant was very clear, but we were not very clear. So we decided on, taking this up as a challenge. For myself, it was a challenge because it was going to be a very steep learning curve. I had done marketing and strategy. For the last 2 years, I was working in Reckitt, looking at offline sales and traditional marketing. So to pick up digital marketing for a digital first platform and a brand was a very challenging experience. And that's what excited me. And that's what it was. Like, I think in the first 3-6 months, everybody was doing everything as how things are, right? So the role was very clear that whatever it takes to get the platform up and running, that's what we got to do. So in fact, for the first couple of months, we spent a lot of time in gathering insights. So before the actual website could be up, what we did is we set up another website and we spent 2-3 months in selling products on that particular website. So it's almost like the BYOB that kids are doing,
wow.
right?
Okay.
Because we realized that that's the best way to get insights instead of just doing secondary research or primary research. If these are the customers that we are going to acquire, the first 100, 200, 300 customers that we acquired on that other website are consumers that each one of us spoke to personally. Right? And that built the bedrock and gave us conviction. So I think the first 3-6 months was all about getting the consumer insight, building conviction on top of it, so that there's more clarity on what is it that we want the platform to become.
Got it. So let's deep dive into that, right? I think it's something that we keep telling Mesa students also, that customer insights are so important.
Yeah.
So when you built this website, did you have a high level direction as to who the customer persona was, or were you still searching for the customer persona that you wanted to serve?
We had some sense on who we wanted or what's the ideal customer segment that we wanted to go after. And this is basis the learnings we'd had from the previous website that we'd built, right? The test website that we had, so to say. That gave us a lot of insights on the direction that we wanted to take. And this was a market which was very nascent back then. Like hair fall was a problem. Hair fall or sexual health was a problem that not a lot of people were solving back then. So we knew that there's a lot of latent demand, but consumers have a barrier of taking that action. They've sort of taken it for granted that if I'm having hair fall, I'll probably try 1 or 2 things and nothing will work and I'll probably live with it. Right? So that was a core insight that we had, that people are not using the right products and people have almost given up on the problem. So that's the problem statement that we wanted to solve for. So we were very clear that this is the insight that we want to build the platform on.
Yeah, that's interesting again. And if you think about it, like hair fall is such a hair on fire situation for most men, right? You would almost, guess that they would have tried really hard enough to solve that problem for themselves.
Yeah.
So it seems, outside in at least, that information asymmetry was never the problem, because people would have searched for some kind of solutions enough number of times. So what was the core problem that they were facing?
So we realized over time that access of information was the problem, right? Anybody could Google. If you just Google hair fall solutions, you will actually find 10 to 12 different things, from home remedies to oils to shampoos to serums to hair transplants to prescription products. So the problem is one size doesn't fit all, right? Which was the core thing. And the place where people are seeking expertise was the internet, which is not the best place, right? Because end of the day, hair fall is not treated as a medical condition, as a cosmetic condition, but it is a medical condition at the end of the day, right? People are reaching out to doctors, and especially men. We realize that they, unless they are in a situation ki yaar main ut baith nahi pa raha hu, is when they decide to go to a doctor for something as trivial in their minds as hair fall. And that's the dichotomy. It was inside, it eats everybody up, right? It really hurts their confidence if they see hair fall happening. And it really beats down their confidence. But they still don't want to go to a doctor. So the biggest gap we realized was that people are not reaching out to the right sources of information, which is the experts. So how do we make sure that we make that frictionless? Which is why, and at that point of time, we started the telehealth platform. We had a team of doctors. So we would urge consumers to come and speak to the doctors first before even saying this is the product that will work for.
Got it. Just let's take a step back, because a few of our users probably need to know what Man Matters is.
Sure.
So why don't you just take them through what Man Matters is? And I think Man Matters was the first brand that Mosaic Wellness started with, right? So a bit of information on Man Matters would be helpful.
Sure. So Man Matters is a health and wellness platform for men. It's an elective health platform. So we help solve for problems like hair loss, dandruff, beard growth, nutrition, skin, hygiene, amongst other things, right? So the vision is to build a platform or a safe. So there's 2 parts. There's an emotional aspect and there's a functional aspect. The emotional aspect we realized is that men don't have a safe space to open up. The reason why they are not seeking help for some of these things is because the way societal conditioning works is that it's not manly to open up and talk about and crib about your problems. You're supposed to man up and deal with it. The flip side to that is that you're not seeking expert help. So the emotional aim of the platform is to give men a safe space to open up where they can seek expert help. And the functional part of it is that you seek help from the right people, which is why you have doctors, you have coaches on the platform. So let's say if you have a hair loss problem, you come on the platform, you speak to a doctor. diagnose your problem, understand your problem, and then you get a treatment which is tailored and customized for you. And then the platform also provides you coaches, and the platform is built in a way because it's a journey. You have to, if you want to see the outcome, you have to stay on this for 6 to 9 months. The other big problem was that if you start something, it's very hard to stick to a habit. Like you're trying to build a new habit, you're trying to change behavior. You let men know that, oh, this lifestyle is not working out for your hair or for your beard or for your nutrition. You need to change this. That's very hard.
Yeah.
Right. So the platform is essentially trying to help men be their best selves, be very confident, and help them give solutions personalized and tailored to them.
Got it. And was customer education ever a problem? I mean, sometimes what happens is that with problems which have been pertaining for such long periods of time, people almost kind of categorize them as tar pit problems, like problems that cannot be solved profitably. For example, even at Mesa, sometimes you are asked this question that the fact that higher education has failed us is a problem that we know for the last God knows how many years. But solving it profitably was something that did not exist due to macro tailwinds or headwinds that the space faced. So when it comes to hair fall also, sometimes what happens is in the customer's mind, whenever they see a solution to hair fall, they start questioning it. That is this real?
Correct.
Because there are so many solutions, there are so many claims that are being made in the market. So number one, was customer education a challenge? And number two, there were so many people claiming so many different things. How did you kind of cut through that noise to say, something like this will actually work?
Yeah. Interesting question, because we've also figured over time that the customer journey is such that when you have hair fall, the biggest problem with hair fall is when you actually realize you have the problem, you're actually a little bit late in solving the problem already. So you realize you have a problem, then you start Googling for a solution, right? And you almost try the path to least resistance, which is, let's change my shampoo.
Achha.
Let's change my oil. Oil is something that I've heard works, so let me try this, right? So this consumer is somebody who's tried a couple of things and has not seen results, obviously, because they don't work on solving for hair loss, so to say. So by the time they arrive to us, we were very clear that the objective is to make them realize that it can be solved, but you've been doing the wrong things.
Okay.
This is the right way to solve for hair loss, and a lot of people have actually seen results with that. Now, of course, when we started off, there was a small set of consumers who were more evolved, who bought into the idea, which became our initial few customers, right? Who said that, oh yeah, we've read enough and we've done the research and we know that XYZ things don't work. These are the things that work. You're giving that to me. Great, I'm going to try this out. Right? So that also helped us show results to more consumers later on that this really works.
Got it. So I think one thing that you said there was that there were different kinds of customers. So say suppose there's a customer who's facing hair loss, then there's one customer who will be researching enough to kind of know that these are the good things, these are the bad things. Then there will be one who has just researched as much as that person can and is, I would say, semi-informed. And there's one who has not researched at all. So what you're saying was that the low-hanging fruit for you, or the ones who got immediately attracted to your offering, were the first ones.
Correct.
And they had researched enough. They kind of knew all the different terminology that they were supposed to know. And that's like pretty interesting, right? And for those customers also, what part of the customer journey did you get involved in? So say suppose a person has hair loss, like you said.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that they do is, I would say, semi-research, right? Or I would say shallow research. And they say, okay, I need to change my shampoo. Or they go for a haircut and the barber says, आपका बाल खराब है तो आप ये वाला shampoo ले लो और इससे हो जाएगा, या फिर रोज आप तेल लगाओ. They do that for a bit and then they realize that that's also not working.
Correct.
So is that the point at which you pick up the customer journey, or is it at the point at which hair loss happens? Like, where did you see the customer actually come into your funnel?
So when we started off, a lot of people are actually at a point where they were really stressed about hair fall. They are people who'd been seeing hair fall since 3-4 years,
Achha.
have lost a lot of hair, were the people who were obviously like, okay, if this works or it doesn't work for us, right? And that's when we realized that we also need to filter out the right consumers, because the reality is that after a while, you can't help person again, right? Like you have to intervene at the right time. So coming to your question, over time, what we also realized is that intervening early, now early doesn't mean that a person who is not facing hair loss. See, in India, close to 80-85% of the men experience male pattern baldness after a particular age, right? So safe to say that almost 80% of people will face hair fall at some point of time. Our job is not to educate folks who are not facing hair fall to say that you might face hair fall, start early. That's not what we decided. We decided instead to intervene in between that people who are anyway looking for a solution but are going after the wrong solutions because they're aware about the problem. If the marketing job to be done was to making people aware that you might have a hair fall problem, that's I think a lot tougher. So we didn't take that up. We said that we'll go after people who are aware that I have a problem. I want to do something about it, but are doing the wrong things are the places where we interjected and said that this won't help you. This is how it's going to help you.
Got it. And so now there is a customer persona that we've kind of narrowed down on. There's also an insight that you have about the customers that there's probably information overload. There are a lot of different channels that are saying a lot of different things. And there is, I would say, also a level of customization that is missing, right? Or personalization, customization that is missing. And it's a large problem. It's a problem that needs to be handled. Say, suppose there's a youngster out there who has also identified a similar customer persona, has identified a problem, has a very unique insight about the customer and wants to go about building a D2C brand. Given your experience at how it kind of went on with Man Matters, what would you say are the first, say, 5 steps in kind of making sure that they can go ahead and build that D2C brand from scratch?
Yeah, I think I know we touched upon customer insights, but I would still again impress upon customer insights, right? That speak to as many consumers as you can in your target segment. Because step 1 is building conviction. Having an insight is one thing. Really believing that, yes, this insight is there and I feel the pain of the consumer is something else, right? Unless you speak to 200, 300, 500 consumers all talking the same thing. You get a pulse of the consumer. You understand the words that they are saying. You understand the emotion with which they are going through it. I think building conviction is step 1, right? Step 2 would probably be testing out the idea. I think it's extremely easy to have a website or a landing page up today, test out, send a couple of people over there, if not by performance marketing, like, run a couple of ads or even reach out to a couple of people that to try out the landing page as well, right? So I think testing out the hypothesis would be step 2, because it's great if that person already has, this is exactly what I want to do. Most of us would usually be in a place, these are maybe 2-3 things that I'm not sure about. These are 2-3 options that I have.
Correct.
So maybe test out all of those 2-3 options and build again more conviction on this is exactly what I want to do. Post that, I think creating content has become a lot more easier these days, right?
As step number 3. And just to push on that, we'll come to step number 3 again. Let's step number 2. A lot of people feel that once you have customer insights, the next thing that you do is build a product. So are you saying that you build a website without a product?
You can. In fact, a lot of times I think the best way to test whether product or a service or a proposition will work is to maybe just have a middle landing page where you're just capturing insights. Let's say you're just asking consumers to fill forms, right? You pitch your idea that this is what we are thinking. If this interests you, why don't you share your details with us, right? So then 2 things happen. You can look at the cost per lead. So that will give you a close proxy, while it's not equivalent to a CAC, but you will get a sense whether you're able to convince customers or not. Second, you're able to test ads, because ultimately you will just change the landing page and the conversion for that, but you will know what's working on the ads front as well. And third, you will get a very good list of consumers who might be your potential customers. So speaking to them would give you a lot of insights, right? So yeah, you're right. You don't need to have a product in the beginning to test out an idea for sure.
So what you're saying is that, say, suppose I want to target the hair fall market. Then what I could do is I could build a couple of performance marketing ads. These could be static ads, which are, not videos. And then, of course, video ads. And put them on Instagram, Facebook, the regular platforms, Google. And what I do is that once customers click on them, they come to the website. On the website is all the marketing material that needs to be there, which is trying to convince the customers as to why they need to choose us.
Yeah.
And then there's a call to action. A call to action, which probably, call to action is usually like a button, right? Which makes them click on it, number one. And number two, asks for certain information. And usually that information should be enough, because if customers are not ready to fill up that information, then these are not
Clear indicator.
is a clear indicator that those customers are not very high intent customers, right? So through that, I think what you're saying is that number one, we get to know what is the cost per lead with respect to how much money we are spending on performance marketing for one person to fill up that form. So go through that entire process of seeing the advertisement, finding it interesting, clicking on it, coming to the website, finding the website interesting, clicking on the CTA, being okay with the fact that I'm going to be, spending time sharing all of this information and then sharing all of that information. And that gives you a good idea as to what the CACs would look like, because beyond that, conversion is something that you don't know about.
Yeah. And also, I think it's a good place for you to optimize. Like, you should not be in a place where you've invested, you have the product, you want to spend a lot of money, but you are not doing it in the best optimized manner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are different steps to this. If you're running a static ad, there are so many variations that you can do. What's the caption? What's the heading that works? What's the imagery that's working? What's the color that's working? You don't want to be in a place where you have the pressure to sell a product and then you're doing all of these iterations.
Yeah.
It's a great place for you to, because the cost for acquiring a customer would be much higher than the cost per lead to get a consumer to fill the form, right? So you can use this opportunity to also iterate a lot on different parts of your funnel, which is go deeper into the ads, iterate an A/B test on the particular ads. Once they're on the landing page, understanding what should be your information hierarchy. Are you communicating the right thing or not? What should the headline of the CTA be like? So it's a great playing ground, right? Where you can feel confident and you can take a target that, okay, if I'm getting a cost per lead of 50 rupees, if I'm able to get it down to 20, that's great, right? Because then you also get confidence that you're going in the right direction.
And just very tactical question with respect to understanding the cost per lead. Is there a specific number that you would be satisfied with, or does it depend on the price of the product? Does it depend on whether it's a product or whether it's a service? Any guidance there?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what category, on what product or service you're giving. But what we should definitely try to see is that if you're getting, let's say, 100 leads, if you're manually calling these people and trying to convert some of them, right? Or at least get a sense that, oh yes, they're willing to buy the product, that will give you a rough sense of the ratio. If from 100 leads, I'm able to convert, let's say, 10 people, so 10%. Then I know if I'm getting a cost per lead of 20 rupees, then my CAC would somewhere be in the range of 200 rupees. And is that acceptable for me and my category and for my margins or not?
Got it. No, that's very interesting. So essentially what you're saying is that once you've got enough leads from this, fake website that we've built, you can call these leads and understand what the percentage conversion would look like. Let's assume it's 1%, right? Say suppose my cost per lead is 1,500. And if suppose it's 1%, then you kind of know that you will need to get 100 leads, which means that per lead, your customer acquisition cost is going to be somewhere around 15,000 rupees, which is, 1,500. It's going to be 1.5 lakhs. And that's how you can kind of see whether does it even make sense. So that's like a handy tool for.
And I think it's very interesting you mentioned, because a lot of times we are very married to our idea. And especially if you've spoken to initial 15, 20 consumers and you get a lot of resonance. You get married to the idea, right? I think this is a very good stress test to get a very good reality check whether you're going in the right direction or not.
And I keep telling people these, right? These things. For example, even at Mesa, when students are building businesses, sometimes their definition of an MVP, a minimum viable product, is a lot. It's like, I ask them, what is your MVP? They're like, I'm going to require 6 engineers and I'm going to require 6 months to build a platform. And I keep giving them this example that when both me and Ankit were starting Mesa School, the first thing that we did was we built a website. And there were these ideas in our head as to how our positioning needs to look like, the kind of brand that we wanted to build, how we wanted to declutter the market because it's also a very noisy market. And we put that messaging out. And once we started attracting customers, we started talking to them. And on the basis of whether we were attracting the right customers or not, we started changing our messaging as well. And we saw a very palpable difference in the kind of customers that we would attract when we would change the messaging.
True.
And that's why we had multiple websites. There was one website which would say certain things, another one which would say certain things. And then when we used to talk to customers from these different websites, they were fundamentally different with respect to what their job to be done was, what their willingness to pay was, their commitment to coming for a program like this was. So it's very interesting that you say that. But okay, let's get back, right? So
Sure.
Step 1, customer insights. Step 2, try out, build something quick, take it to the customers. It can be, most of the times, 99% of the times, can be a simple website with a conversion page, with a performance marketing, with performance marketing ads running on top of that can help you understand what your customer acquisition costs could look like, and also gives you a good sense of how large that market would be and how urgent that problem is for people to solve, and also gives you a bunch of names and contact numbers so that you can call them and get in touch with them. What would be step number 3?
I think step 3 would probably be building, I wouldn't exactly say community, but a little bit of social following as well, right? Because creating reels, creating content is practically zero cost these days, right? Except for putting your own time. But again, like if you also don't, if you're just starting off and you don't want to spend a lot of capital in performance marketing as well, social media is another great place where you can test out stuff, right? Where you can create quick reels and you can put it out and see if you're able to build followers also. Because at the end of the day, if you really want to get a sense check whether this problem is relevant, whether this topic is relevant, and if you're able to build a social following in the right way, I think it'll again give you a lot of confidence and direction into what will also work on ads, because essentially the platforms operate in a similar manner. If they get engagement on social, they get engagement on ads, the ad will get pushed, right? The signals sort of match over there. Of course, there's a disconnect between people consuming content and people willing to pay for a service or a product. I think that's also a good testing ground to gather more insights and also get more confidence.
Got it. So social media would be like number 3. And any challenges that you see there? Any risks that you see there?
Yeah, I think the challenge is definitely the bridge between social to commerce is pretty weak at this point of time. So expecting that I'll get ROI in terms of transactions from social in specific categories might not work out in the beginning.
Okay.
Right. For example, on Man Matters, our ads would be operating at bottom of funnel or middle of funnel, targeting different consumers. But the job of social media would be to build more awareness, right? Because like you mentioned, there's a lot of information in this space. So we need to break myths. And that doesn't work in ads typically, right? Because people want very clear, what is the product? What will it solve for me? So social media is a great place for us to build that top of funnel awareness and build that consideration that we are a platform that is disseminating the right sort of information. And I might not have hair loss at this point of time, but I know that these guys give good hair care tips and there are experts on the platform. Doctors come and give relevant advice.
Yeah.
I know that they are hair experts.
Correct. No, that's so. I mean, just to share on that also, I think you're right. Social media is very important. Helps you build conviction that there are enough people who care about this problem.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, I don't think the goal there at that point of time, at least, is conversions. I think it's top of the funnel awareness. Enough people should know about us. To some extent, I think even when you have a website, sometimes social media acts like a reason to believe.
Yeah.
So if you have like 100K followers on social media, I think people will check you out on social media. They may or may not follow you, but at least they feel that you're legitimate.
Absolutely.
Given the number of D2C brands that are operating out there. I think one of the challenges that we've also seen here at Mesa School is that with social media, whether you're working with an agency or you have an internal team, the KPIs of the team are like aligned that get us more followers, right? And sometimes what happens is that on social media, you have to kind of do certain things to get more followers, which may or may not kind of resonate with the brand.
True.
And you might end up getting a lot of followers. But if you don't do it in the brand language, then it's actually not testing your hypothesis as to whether this will work in the market or not.
Sure.
So I think that's a healthy challenge, so to speak, that we've also seen here. But I think social media, correct. I think step number 3 makes a lot of sense. Let's move on.
Yes, I think the next things would be to understand, like, we looked at the acquisition side of things,
Yeah.
where you're acquiring consumers. I think it's also important then to delve into, if you acquired maybe, let's say, a couple of consumers, to understand what the customer journey is like, right? So I think getting a lot of understanding about that, because the job's not done, especially, let's say, in our category, like health and wellness, or when you're want to give outcomes, the platform is committing outcomes to you. It's a 6 to 9 months journey, right? So understanding what the consumer will go through at what point of time. Like, if he starts the treatment, we know in 3 weeks he's going to face XYZ problem. So do we have the right communications geared towards solving for that anxiety?
Yeah.
A very simple example, I had bought curtains from some D2C brand recently, and after 4-5 days, the loop came off and it was not working how it was supposed to work. But I got a WhatsApp message immediately saying that, this is what happens. It's normal. This is how we can solve it. My anxiety went away, right? Like, I didn't blame the brand or the product then, man. Like, yeah, they are aware about it. So we, on Man Matters also, we do that a lot, because after having seen so many consumers, and because we were looking out for it, we mapped out the consumer journey or the customer journey with the brand as well, and then anticipating what the customer might go through and solving for that. So getting clarity on customer journey is
very important. And if you were to give us an example, say if we take Man Matters.
Sure.
So what does the customer journey from a person not knowing about Man Matters to becoming an advocate and a loyal customer of Man Matters? Like, how does that journey I know it will be like 10,000 different journeys, but if suppose you had to take like the most common journey that exists out there, what would that look like?
Sure. So typically, this person is a person who would have started noticing hair loss and would have realized that, okay, let's go and look for solutions. And if you're doing our job right, then he would have landed on Man Matters. Once there, he would have gotten convinced that I don't need to buy a product or any random product. I should first speak to a doctor, which Man Matters is providing me. So this person is actually taking out the time speaking to a doctor. We've made it friction free because you can do it on the platform. It's a telehealth platform. We offer it in different languages as well. So we try to remove as many barriers as possible. So this person speaks to the doctor. Step one is the right diagnosis, because consumers don't understand what stage of hair fall they are in and what is the root cause for their hair fall. Because hair fall is not happening just because of the hair and the scalp. It's your lifestyle, it's your diet, it's a lot of other things like stress. So unless the consumer understands and diagnoses the right way, that's step one for us, right? So he diagnoses himself the right way, then he gets onto a treatment which the doctor has given to him that bases your root cause and bases your stage of hair fall, this is the treatment that will work for you. And the right expectation setting happens for the consumer. He knows what he's signing up for, that this is going to take a minimum of 6 to 9 months of him consistently adopting a new habit. So once that expectation is clear, he gets the treatment, he starts it. Now there's the Man Matters app. It's the digital coach, right? Because we realize that 6 to 9 months is a long period. And for you to change a habit, it's very difficult, right? So we have digital coaches and physical coaches, both via the app, who are making sure that they're handholding the consumer. So he starts the treatment. Day one, he understands, how do I need to use the app? What are the things I need to take care of? Because these are products that are new to him. He needs to know that how to use the product, right? So all of that is cleared in the first 4-5 days, that what should you do, what is the right way to do that, and how long are you supposed to do it.
And you have to, like, the app has to be a part of the journey.
Yes, app has to be a part of the journey. So therefore, let's say if a consumer is not coming via app, if he's coming only via the website, then we make sure that in the first 10-15 days, the consumer is downloading the app. So it's not a vanity metric for us that we have so many app downloads. We know for a fact that if a consumer, like, there's enough data that if a consumer is on the app and using all the features, the chances of him seeing outcomes is 2x higher. Right? So
and a higher lifetime value when it comes to Man.
Yes. Right. Because at the end of the day, it's still that if I'm promising outcome to that user, I need to do everything that it takes to deliver outcome to the user, right? Which includes talking to a doctor, which includes using the coach feature, which includes being on the app. Because what we also then do is we take regular touch points from the user, right? Which tell us beforehand that whether this user is seeing the right results expected or not. So in 3 weeks, we know that he should have started seeing some hair shedding. Now that's a cause of concern for a lot of people. Like, imagine you've come to solve for your hair loss, you started a treatment, and you're seeing that you're losing more hair. But that's the way the medication is supposed to work, right? But again, it's a big source of anxiety. So we are supposed to intervene at the right time, saying that this is normal. You don't need to worry. In fact, the treatment is working for you. If needed, you can speak to a doctor also at this point of time, because a lot of times just me telling or sending a message is not going to work for the consumer. So there's an option that he can reconnect with the doctor, and he can speak to the same doctor that he spoke the very first time. So that builds trust even more.
Correct.
Instead of speaking to some other random person or a doctor apart from that, right? So this is the journey for the first 2-3 weeks when he's gone through this. Every day he is logging his tasks, because after the doctor has spoken to him, he's put down a plan just for this consumer, that what are you supposed to do? What lifestyle changes do you need to do? What's your diet supposed to look like? All of that is incorporated into the app. So this user is then logging all of those things. And if he's not doing that, then my coaches know that maybe he's not on track at this point in time. So they intervene again with this consumer to make sure that you motivate him or get him back and nudge him back onto the track.
Interesting. So a couple of questions here.
Sure.
So one is, let's go deeper into this journey, right? It's very interesting. So there's a customer who is facing hair loss, probably tried a lot of stuff, comes across a performance marketing ad. Is that usually the way a person would discover Man Matters? Like,
yeah, about 50 to 60% of
50-60% of the times it's performance marketing. That and the job to be done of the performance marketing ad is very simple. We're not trying to convince you that Man Matters is the thing for you. We're just trying to get you to the website.
Actually, a different view over there, because that's how we started, by saying that the job to be done is just get the consumer on the platform. What we've realized is that if you get the consumer with the wrong expectation, that's not going to help us. In fact, because everywhere else I'm communicating that you need to do this for 6 to 9 months. If the right consumer is not coming, or let's say if he's not diagnosing himself the right way,
drop out ho jayega.
Drop out ho jayega. In fact, the worst is if he sticks with the wrong product. Like, imagine if a stage 3 user comes and buys a stage 1 product because he's not spoken to a doctor, and he's listened to my comms, he use it for 9 months.
Correct.
So he's stuck to that, poor guy, for 9 months, and he's not going to see results, right? So therefore, for us, it's a little bit different, that we actually put a lot of safeguards even in our performance marketing, saying that we have to attract the right kind of customers.
I think that's so important, right? I mean, this happened with us also, because we are a full-time offline program, and in the world of edtech, where 3-month program, online program, you know, usually when performance marketing ads are run, our opinion was, let's get people to the website. Then once they are on the website, unko convert hum log kar lenge. And that's why a lot of tricky things about the program we actually did not put on the website, because we wanted more people to, on the performance marketing ads, because we wanted more people to click on it. So we did not say stuff like 12 months, because it usually deters people to, they're like, 12 months, I don't want to commit to this. Right. Offline, in campus, on campus program, it's going to be a full commitment program. You will need to quit your job. All of this was not in performance marketing. And then what we started seeing was that the wrong customers came to the platform. And these would be people who would ask us the wrong questions, which were making me and Ankit make the wrong decisions for what we needed to build, because we were attracting the wrong customers.
Correct.
So I think double clicking on that, right? Like, the right customers is so very important. So I think what you're saying,
the channel, right? Like, if you start attracting the wrong customers, and let's say if you're making them fill a form, like we discussed in the beginning thesis, right? What ends up happening is, if the algorithm is seeing that, oh yeah, people are filling forms, the job is getting done, it'll keep getting more people like that. So it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle.
It's very difficult to then maybe be 6 months into getting all wrong customers and then saying, okay, let's start afresh. So I think we should be very conscious of this from day one.
So I think something to remember there, that performance marketing is not just about getting any customer to the website. It's getting the right customers with the right intent to the website. So that's the first stage, right? That you get customers to the website. Now, the next stage that you spoke about is that ideally what you would want to do is that if a right customer with the right intent comes to the website, you would want them to set up a call with a doctor, right? That
diagnose themselves.
And like probably a self-assessment followed by a call, right? So what percentage of people end up doing that? What are the kind of initiatives that you kind of launched, and what were the challenges that you saw there in people actually not taking that step and not being ready to, actually engage in that call?
Yeah. So I think the initial challenge was clearly this, that if men did feel ki speaking to dermat can solve the problem, or maybe they should speak to dermat, they would have probably been doing it
Already.
already. But that was not happening. So the behavior change was required, because to make them feel that, listen, a doctor is needed even for something like hair loss was a big challenge.
Yeah.
And therefore the communication helped there, that you've tried XYZ things, it hasn't worked because you're trying the wrong things. Now speak to an expert, right? So we framed it that way. And then we started seeing that people have been speaking to doctor, and of course we make them fill an assessment form first and then they connect with a doctor. But we make sure that close to half of the consumers end up connecting with a doctor before or after they purchase a treatment from us, right? Because it's extremely important that right expectations are set, and the doctor is the best touch point for that. Doesn't matter if I'm sending 10 comms on WhatsApp saying this will take 6 to 9 months, 6 to 9 months. Most of the people don't read it or don't pay a lot of attention. So that's the most high intensity touch point that we have. So we make sure that a lot of people go through that flow.
So out of all the customers that Man Matters has, what you're saying is that 50% go through this. The 50% have done a self-assessment and have had a conversation.
So self-assessment and doctor combined would actually be a lot higher. It will be 65%.
Achha. And then who are these remaining customers? These are customers who just buy off the shelf on the website?
Yeah. So these are customers who buy stuff on their own. And what we do post that is make sure that because if we've tried to tell them 5 to 6 times that you need to speak to a doctor and they're still not doing it.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I know what's best for me. There are two kinds of consumers. Either they are very evolved consumers who have research and are like, I know exactly what I want. So let me buy this. Right?
Yeah.
As a safety check, what we do is if they've bought it, the platform will make sure that we take inputs from them to realize whether they are the right customers or not. What I mean by that is, if a consumer is at, let's say, stage 3 of hair fall, but he's come and bought a stage 1 product, he thinks I've done the research and this will work for me. But we keep taking feedback from him that, if if the platform identifies that he's a stage 3 user, and we know that he's only bought a stage 1 product, all interventions are not then to get him to reorder a product or to get him to open the app. It is to get him to the right treatment.
Got it.
Right. So the platform modifies the objective for that cohort of users and says that they have to get on the right.
And how do you identify a user as a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 user? And this is the need that you are identifying, right?
So this is very easy. There's actually technical, like even doctors do it. There's something called Norwood-Hamilton scale, which is basis how much hairline has receded, which are the parts from which your hair loss has happened, and to what degree. So there's a very clear visual representation. So it's very easy to take inputs from the user that which of these look like your scalp.
Okay.
But oftentimes we've also realized they don't like selecting the worst ones, right? They'll select one less, no, I'm not this bad. So we ask that in a different manner as well again.
Got it.
To cross check.
And of course, this is not possible for those customers who've not done the self-assessment.
Yeah, so if they've not done self-assessment and every other comm that we send after them, we make sure, so for example, if he's bought a product, the WhatsApp communication that goes out is not to say that reorder the product. The first question is actually, what does your scalp look like?
Okay.
And if he says my scalp looks like 1 and he's on the right product, then sure, reorder. But if it's saying 2 or 3, then you need to speak to a doctor.
Got it.
Understand, because you're not on the right treatment.
So let me kind of try to structure this, right? So now performance marketing has happened. The right customers have come to the website. There are 2 types of customers on a high level. Ones who will take the self-assessment and will book the consultation. But the fact that they've taken a self-assessment also gives you a lot of data about, what stage that customer is at. And you can kind of tailor your communication and your pushes and nudges on the basis of what that stage is at.
Correct.
But then there is this tricky bunch of people who have not even done the self-assessment and are buying products online. To these people, once they've bought a product online, you can kind of keep on sending nudges to them that pushes them to do that self-assessment or end up doing that call.
Correct.
And then once you've segregated and the push is to kind of be able to collect that data. But once you've kind of collected that data, what you want to do is you want to segregate, and on the basis of that segregation, push them to the next stage.
Correct.
So if you're a stage 1 customer, then we know that you need to buy the stage 1 therapy and the stage 1 products. And hence, what we'll be doing throughout our marketing messaging will be pushing you towards
that.
That part. No, that's very interesting. And say suppose that's the second stage. So people need to do the self-assessment. They need to do the call with the doctor. I think the next stage is that they download the app.
Correct.
That's correct, right?
Correct.
So what percentage drops do you see there? I'm sure there must be like massive drops there, or maybe not, because now Man Matters has become a much more mature brand. But how did you kind of solve for those drops? Because it's a large initiative for people to kind of go onto the app store and download the app, right?
Yeah.
So how did you kind of figure that out?
Yeah, I think value addition was one of the things that
Mhm.
that we did, right? Like, for example, if you want to connect with the doctor again, for example, then that can happen more seamlessly through the app. We used to give video consults back then as well. That would happen only through the app,
Mhm.
right? So we would make sure that a consumer is very clearly seeing a value addition. Like, one of the things, once a consumer has understood that, yes, I want to go ahead with Man Matters, we'll make it very clear that to see results, you have to stay consistent. And everybody knows that it's very hard to stay consistent, including the consumer himself, right? So if we are able to give him tools that will help him stay consistent, access to services that will help him stay consistent, it's almost a no-brainer for consumer to say, okay, let's go ahead and do it. So it's not necessary that a consumer only downloads the app and becomes a customer. Post becoming a customer, a lot of people actually download the app and then get retained on the app because of the value that they're seeing that the app is able to provide to them.
Got it. And once they've downloaded the app, there's one more stage, which is making sure that they are engaged with the app.
Yeah.
Has that been a problem? Or how do you build the right kind of flywheels to make sure they stay engaged?
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing the step 1, 2, 3 right, step 4 becomes quite easy, because if you're getting the right intent consumer, if you diagnosed him the right way, if the platform, because now when he downloads the app, and I know that he's a stage 2 consumer, the app for him versus somebody for stage 3 will look very different. The content pieces are very different. The nudges are very different. This app is personalized for him. So that changes. And when he realizes that there's value to this, then we actually see that people do come onto the app again. Of course, it's a new habit, so that challenge is going to be there.
Yeah.
But the focus is on adding value to the life of the
Got it. And it's also a marketing problem, I would say, right? Because there's no instant gratification. So in hair fall, it's not like so you have to be kept motivated through messaging.
Correct.
And so how did you kind of tackle that?
Yeah, I think very interesting point, because that was the second biggest problem. The reason why people were not able to stay consistent for 6 months, apart from it just being hard, is because you do this for 3 months and the perceived benefit is nothing. Is next to zero, right? Because you start seeing results after 4 or 5 months, or the right results in 6 months. So very, very tough problem to solve. So therefore, like you said, we had small nudges which will make them feel that they're going in the right direction. We would reward them if they are following streaks and doing habits that are assigned to them in the right manner. So we've applied a little bit of gamification over there to make sure that people stay engaged. Other thing that's worked is, of course, one thing is we are not as observant as we think we are. But if you actually ask consumers to click images of their scalp and record it after every 2 to 3 weeks, and then look at it after 3 months, they can actually start seeing that there is some difference. Just making them realize that, yes, these are the places where your hair fall used to happen and it's not happening now. Because men are a little less aware about these things, right? So just making them more aware that notice these changes is what's helping us solve that problem.
Nice. And so once a person has stayed true to or engaged on the app, I think the next thing falls on you guys, that outcome is very important. And for you as a brand, I think there's also like a flywheel, right? That you get the right customers, you deliver the right outcomes. If the right outcomes are delivered, you kind of attract the right customers, and then that flywheel only gets stronger. So how have you, or how has Man Matters over time kind of taken these outcomes and marketed them in the right manner to be able to keep on attracting the right kind of audience and with like better CACs, so to speak?
Yeah. So we used to run this program internally because, like I mentioned, initially when we started, there were a lot of challenges before people start seeing results. They need to get diagnosed, you have to set up a system for that, you need to have doctors. If he's not on the right treatment, you get him onto the right treatment, make sure that he's consistent. So till the time we built out these systems, what we actually did is we said that, okay, let's take up 100 consumers and we'll do all these things manually for them. So we took up 100 customers and we made sure that each one of them are speaking to the doctors. We made sure that we are connecting with them and making sure that they are following the treatment. They are checking in with us, sending selfies to us, scalpies to us. And we would reward them obviously for that. And over a period of 3 to 4 months is how we built our bank of consumers that, yes, they see results. So that gave comfort to us also on this thesis that, because otherwise, if you look at the face of it, if you're not diagnosed, 50% chance you'll not see result. If you're not compliant, 100% chance you'll not see result. So the drop off is so high on all of these things that one would actually believe that this doesn't work, which is the common prevalent notion. So we had to do all of these things manually, make sure that out of these 100 consumers, we've seen 40, 50, 60 results of people who actually seen hair fall control and hair regrowth. And that became the base for us, right? And then it was upon us to figure out how do we make sure that we create content around this, feature those consumers and make sure that they look authentic as well. So that's how we went about it.
Got it. No, very interesting. I mean, that funnel itself gives me a lot of ideas. Let's quickly, talk about channels. So how have you seen the channel mix kind of change, right from you launching Man Matters? If suppose somebody tomorrow has an idea, about, say, launching a D2C brand for a very specific customer, and I think the hero product when it came to Man Matters was hair fall focused.
Correct.
Right? If suppose they are also launching with a hero product, like what is the first channel that you should go for? Because there's your own website, there is social media, there is an app, there is Amazon and other marketplaces. Like what would your insight and advice be on that front?
So what worked for Man Matters, for example, or what could be a general advice is it a pull market or a push market, right? If you believe that a lot of people are facing this problem and they're regularly searching for this, let's say something like hair fall, then you know that Google is also a very good acquisition channel for you, right? In fact, in the beginning days, you might actually see that pull customers have higher intent. You might actually see better outcomes with these consumers as well versus pushing consumers, which is typically Facebook and Instagram.
Performance.
So it really depends. If you believe that we are operating in a category where there's enough demand for it already, and we've identified the space to occupy or a unique problem that we are solving, despite it being a big problem, then I think either of these could work. Now, the question between marketplace or your own website, I think really depends. Like, for example, on Man Matters, if to show outcome, I have to handhold the customer so much, there's no way I can do that on marketplaces, right?
Yeah.
It really depends on, I don't get any information. I don't have channels to reach out to this consumer.
It's not your customer.
It's not our customer. And if it's not our customer, that means they'll not see results. Then it doesn't make sense for us to even acquire those consumers, right? Because at the end of the day, they're only going to say that this brand doesn't work or the product does not work and not say that, oh, I didn't diagnose it the right way. Right. So I think for us, the focus has been from the very beginning that because you have to drive health outcomes and it requires a lot of hand holding, we've been very focused on website and app ourselves. Right. That's where we want consumers to come.
Oh, that's so basically, I think just if we were to create like a framework here today, I think what you're saying is that if suppose your product is a product that is going to be heavy on customer education, is going to be heavy on customer insight, then it's better to kind of have channels which might be more restricted, but which give you more access to the customers, which could be your own app and your website.
Correct.
But if suppose if there is a product which is more of a Me Too product, right, where there are enough products in the market, I'm just going to rebrand and have a different differentiator, but then try to enter it, then a marketplace will work because there we already know enough about the customers there, and it's not as if you need to iterate and know truly about what their journeys are and how they are thinking about what their jobs to be done are and so on and so forth. That's a handy framework. So is it like...
So it's also the behavior of the customer, right? Like imagine if I was selling shampoos instead of these treatments, then an app would not have made sense because no customer will download an app to buy a shampoo.
Correct.
It doesn't just logically doesn't make sense, right?
Absolutely.
So if my GTM product were a product that consumers have an existing habit, but I want them to switch to something else, then wherever they are buying that product more prevalently is where we need to be present.
Yeah. So say suppose you were selling shampoos to begin with, do you think you would go with Amazon first with respect or versus say a website?
I think again, if I was selling a shampoo which says that it doesn't work, but if it is outcome based and it still requires a little bit of education of the consumer, I would probably still focus on app or website. But if it's a generic shampoo which is just differentiated, is let's say not Me Too, but is a little different, then sure, it makes sense.
And in general, did Man Matters ever have an internal debate that we are going for a therapy versus a product-based approach, because therapy is also harder, right? It's outcome focused, and I think overall, like, again, I draw I'm just trying to kind of draw parallels to even education for that matter. Education is also very similar. There are like input products, which is you do a course like Coursera, right? You do a course, and if it benefits you, fine. If it doesn't, then
it's on you.
It's on you, right? And that's why the price point is lower, the commitment required is lower. They'll not filter people, and anyone can do it. And then there are programs like which are much more deeper. 12-month programs will require, you'll need to pay more. There'll be a higher opportunity cost because you'll need to quit your jobs. But these need to be outcome focused, because unless and until we have an outcome, then people will not be ready to commit. And the latter ones, which is the outcome focus, are much harder to build, because even getting the first cohort for us was like really hard, because we had to convince them that this was going to work without there being a history of it having worked.
Correct.
Now we do, but now in the second cohort it was easier, but first cohort was difficult. So was there an internal debate that happened in Man Matters as well as to which route to go to? Because most brands have gone for the shampoo and the products route as opposed to a therapy route, right?
Yeah, I think we did have that debate, but because all of us were very clear that the reason why the platform exists is to help men live confidently. And that will not happen unless they see outcomes. There's no point selling products. It doesn't, like, I think one thing that Raven stresses a lot upon is being consumer first, which has been drilled into the founding team, the initial members, and even members now, is that we are solving for the consumer. So great, we can sell a product and he might even buy it, because consumers are gullible in this space sometimes, right? But what is it adding up to? It's not solving his problem. He's lost his trust on the platform. So nobody's gaining out of it, right? Except vanity metrics that, okay, we are doing this sale. So we have that debate, but we've never been conflicted on what we want to do, because we've been very clear that the platform exists for this particular reason.
Yeah. And it's also a different business model, right? I mean, if you think about products, it's more about like your customer acquisition costs are not going to drop drastically over time, right? Whereas with therapy, and I could be wrong here, but if there are enough customers who undergo therapy and can see outcomes, your customer acquisition costs will significantly drop over time. And I would say the lifetime value also of customers will be much higher for a therapy product as compared to, say, a product-based brand, so to speak.
Correct. So you're right, the lifetime value is definitely higher, but the objective, like, you need to convince consumers that you need to do something drastically different. So as you increase in scale, what ends up happening is you need to spend more money on awareness as well. So not necessarily that your CAC will go down, but if you're doing everything right everywhere else, your LTV is able to balance that out.
The conversions will go up.
Conversions go up, and even if not, like, if it now requires 10 times the impressions to convince the user you're spending more money, but you know that the machinery underneath is so solid that anybody who comes in the funnel will 100% see results, or to a great probability see results, then you're okay to take that cost as well.
No, that's interesting. So I think the channel strategy that we spoke about was very interesting. Overall, I think at least my takeaways are that if you're starting a D2C brand in India, then it's not that you try to go to all possible channels and hope and pray that something will work. There is a very specific way to kind of approach that, and it depends a lot on the product itself. So if it is a product that depends on a very specific customer insight, if there is going to be customer education that is going to be required, if you're coming in with a product that probably has not been launched earlier and customers are not used to it, then probably handling and managing the customer journey and owning the customer journey yourself is very important. And that's why your website, your app, these might be a little restrictive, because it might not give you access to a lot of customers. But might not give you access to a lot of customers, but still are the right ways to kind of approach that problem. But if you are trying to sell products where the job to be done for the customers is well known, the insight in that space is like commoditized, and you're kind of entering that space with a slightly different moat, a slightly different USP, then going the marketplaces way would be like a good way to kind of achieve scale. No, I completely resonates with what we try to teach here at Mesa as well. So thanks for those insights. No, cool. I think we've learned a lot about Man Matters today, and you're also running out of time, because I know there's one more class that you need to teach. But Just quickly, Geet, I wanted to understand that what is it that you have covered in the class today? And how do you think that will help students build their own businesses here at Mesa?
Yeah, I think first of all, it was very interesting because this is the first time I was supposed to sit down and structure my learnings from the past 4.5 years. So that was it was a very good activity for myself. And the key message that I really wanted to leave behind was that before you build out a business or a brand, you need to have clarity on exactly who your customer is. And it could be two different segments, but understanding the segment, figuring out the right barriers and triggers for those customers, and then building out all your communications in line with that was something that I tried to impress upon in the class today. And of course, after that, we discussed a lot of tactical things on how to improve conversions on landing pages, and how do you look at funnels, and how do you take customer insights from user behavior. But yeah, broadly, this is what I really wanted to talk about.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming in, Geet. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've spoken to a lot of students here and they've been enjoying your class. So we look forward to hosting you again. And overall, I think this chat also, I got to learn a lot about how D2C brands are built in India. So thank you so much. It was lovely hosting you. And we look forward to hosting you again.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.